Yeehaw, cowboys! That's right, it's a cowboy video as we paint up Shea, that's Captain Shea to you, from 1883. Not specifically the year, but the TV show. That's right, it's the 81st birthday of Sam Elliott, who is probably my favourite cowboy gunslinger of all time. Sorry, John Wayne. So, to celebrate, I'm going to be painting him up as he is in 1883, which is probably one of my favourite recent Western TV shows. So if you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. It's really good. It's pretty cool. And of course, he has an outstanding performance throughout the series. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. And if you're still not quite sure who Sam Elliott is, because you've maybe been living under a rock for the last 50 years, then here's a wee sneak peek here. Okay, so here is Captain Shea in his attire from the show. And as you can see, the first thing I've done is associated each piece of clothing with the relevant Games Workshop paint. And that's what we're going to be doing with this model. Now the model itself is a metal mini from the Deadlands Rail Wars series. He came in a box with a few other cowboys, all with pretty interesting poses, and I just immediately was drawn to that splendid tash. That is some mustache on this model, and of course, naturally, it suits Sam Elliott. So, the first thing that we're doing with this model is I've given it a nice base coat, and I'm using contrast paint, Guilliman Flesh, and I am just applying that over all the skin tones. Once that's dried, I'm now going to work from the most pernickety parts of the model, and so that is the waistcoat. It's the most inset part, and so I'm going to get the brush in there, and if I make a mistake it won't matter because I can paint over it. So I'm using Cantor Blue and I'm painting in that waistcoat. With that, I'm now moving slightly up a layer, and that goes to his neckerchief, and this, as you can see from the picture before, is a kind of pale pink. So I'm using Pink Horror, surprise surprise, and I'm just giving that a nice base coat as well. Next comes the overcoat and the trousers, both of which are getting a nice thin down coat of Mechanicus Grey, a base paint from Citadel again, and I'm just really liberally applying this. It's quite watered down, get it into all those nooks and crannies. It may require a second or third coat too. Once that's finished, I'm now taking Rhinox hide, and again I'm just painting this in the wood, but also the leather areas as well, so like his boots and things like that. Okay, now I'm cracking out the metallics, and I'm using Retributor Armor Gold, but any gold will do really, as long as it's shiny. And I'm just painting in the plate on his rifle. With that comes the real iconic piece of any cowboy, the hat. And I'm painting this hat in a dusty sand colour, and Zandri dust is perfect for that. With the hat painted, now more or less all that's left is the gun barrel, and I'm using nice gunmetal grey for that. Okay, with all of the base colours painted in, it's now time for the shading, and that means liberally soaking the model in Agrax Earthshade. Okay, so after the model has taken a swim in the in the Agrax Earthshade pool, I've allowed it to dry, and that's now really darkened down the model. All of those recesses and crevices of his flowing coat are nicely shaded, but now the whole model's too dark. So what I'm doing is I'm picking out the flat areas and the raised areas of the coat in that original Mechanicus grey. Again, I've watered this down so that it's kind of sitting and glazing really over the top. With that dry, I then use Dawnstone, so it's just a slightly lighter shade of grey, and I'm then using the side of my brush to basically tickle and caress all of the edges. So that's the folds, the peaks of the folds, leaving the troughs that darker grey. And then when that's dried, I'm going again around all the other edges with a lighter grey again. You could use Administratum grey, you could use Ulthuan grey, but to be honest with you, you could just get a bit of white and mix it in with any old grey colour. Okay, and so now it's time for those other highlights. Now, highlighting is probably the slowest part, but if you take your time and again just use a small amount of paint on the end of your brush and just allow the side of the brush to pick out those raised areas, then it is easier than it looks. So I'm picking out the gun barrel, the gun stock, get it right, in Baneblade Brown, which is just again a lighter shade of brown, and I'm just gently drawing in some lines to kind of give it that look of wood texture. With that, I'm then highlighting as well the hat. I'm doing the brim as well as just feathering a nice little wee pattern up the main actual cone of the hat, peak of the hat, tower of the hat, brim, no, said brim, that pointy middle bit, the lump of the hat. And again, I'm just using the next shade up from Xandri Dust in Games Workshop's range, so that was Carrick Stone I used. Now with that finished, I was then highlighting the other areas. So the pink got a highlight with Fulgrim Pink, which is quite a bright pink, but I like it, it stands out. And again, the boots, I think I used Doombull Brown for the leather so that it differed, it was a bit more red and differed from the pale brown of the wood. Now to give a bit more brightness to that dulled down metallics, I've used Stormhost Silver. So I've used the silver on top of the kind of gunmetal, and I've just painted that in a line down the gun barrel so the top of it's a bit shiny. I've then used the gold paint originally again on all of the buttons. I could have used a brass colour, but I already have the gold sitting out, so I just use gold. And then these are all getting a little highlight by just dabbing a little dot of that Stormhost Silver again, just to give it a nice little bit of sparkle. Okay, so now the face. I don't like painting faces, if I'm honest, which is why I still use the contrast paint where I can. But I decided I was going to use a bit of watered down Kislev flesh, and I'm just painting this nice and slowly, nice and lightly on the cheekbones, on his chin, chinny chin, and on his lips as well. And then just the knuckles as well, little dots along the knuckles. And I left it at that. You could go in again, add a bit more white and stuff to it to really make it out. That's what I did. Now, I also don't normally paint eyes, but in this metal model, the eyes were quite distinct. So I gave it a go. That's how you improve, isn't it? So what I did is, my method is to just paint in the entire eye socket in black, and then when that's dried, take the thinnest brush you've got and put the tiniest white dot in both sides of the eye, both corners. And so that just, rather than doing the opposite where you paint it all white and put a little black dot and then it looks like the guy's got bloody, he's looking in different directions, this way is a lot easier. So give it a go, you'll be surprised how easy it is. So with the scary eye painted in, it's now all about the base. And for this I decided, well, I was going to paint it really bright yellowy sandy colour, but if you think about it, most westerns are actually done on grass, not on the plains, aren't they? Plains Indian ones. So I've gone for my standard, paint the base Rhinox hides or dark brown, dry brush it in a couple of shades of lighter browns like Baneblade Brown, Gothic Brown, and then stick on some good old tufts. Tufts make everything look better. So the tufts I've used for this, because again it's that kind of aridy, could still be used as deserts, I've used a couple of yellow dead grass stands and then one more of a luscious, nice juicy grass as well. Okay, and so here he is. I think you'll agree with that big white tash, he does look like Sam Elliott. And with the colour choice as well, here he is painted up as Captain Shea. I love painting myself cowboys. I think they're great fun, they're very charismatic models, and I used to watch a lot of westerns with my granddad before he passed away, and so I find it great that you can paint up models to look like the actors as well. So here is my model in honour of Sam Elliott